The only diet you'll need to lose fat. After 20 years, I feel like I've cracked it. We all know that losing weight is tough, but keeping it off is even tougher. The truth is, a lot of stuff out there is just either confusing, overcomplicated, or just plain ridiculous. Even the diets that seem to work, they work until a point and then just stop. I'm gonna walk you through a diet that feels much more like a lifestyle. It's straightforward, sustainable, and most of all, it works. Let's dive in. First things first, every fat loss diet, regardless of what flashy name it has, boils down to one thing, and that's getting you into a calorie deficit. That's just a fancy way of saying you need to burn more calories than you're actually eating. Here's a wild study that may shock you. Participants doubled their protein intake without changing anything else in their diet. Logic would say more food, more weight gain. I mean, surely. Not in this case. They ended up eating 440 fewer calories per day without even trying. After 12 weeks, they lost nearly 10 pounds of fat. You're probably wondering how. To a point, protein is very filling. Eating enough protein, at least 0.7 grams per pound of body weight or goal body weight, tells your body to, hey, like keep onto the muscle and actually burn fat. And also, this will make it a lot easier to keep the fat off in the long run. And of course, chicken breasts are not your only options. Here's some other great sources of protein. Choose between 1 to 1.5 servings per meal, depending on your goal and the amount of meals you actually eat. Now, keeping the theme of eating more, but shifting our focus to carb. When I was younger and I first tried to get lean, the advice was just eat meat and vegetables, no carbs. So naturally, I decided to give this a go. Bread, rice, sweets, and even ketchup, completely gone. By day 5, I just felt drained. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, my energy levels were in the toilet, and my gym performance was in the garbage. Sure, like by day 7, I had lost around 8 pounds, but I wasn't looking or feeling any better. And there's a good reason for this. When you cut out carbs, your body drops a lot of water weight. Carbs pour water into your muscles, so when they're gone, so is the water. So it's not just fat you're losing, it's a lot of water within the muscles. Besides, studies have found no difference in fat loss when comparing a low carb diet to a high carb diet over a 12-month period. Carbs are your main energy source, especially through intense workouts. Sure, your body can adapt and find other fuel sources, but if you're in a calorie deficit and you're eating enough protein, you'll lose fat whether you're cutting carbs or feasting on them. I personally save most of my carbs for before and after my workouts when I actually need the energy, and some with dinner. Of course, it's not a free-for-all with carbs. Calories from carbs do add up, so as part of your plan, you may need to cut back or go for more filling forms of carbs. Have you tried a low-carb diet? If so, let me know your experience in the comments below. We've talked about protein and carbs, and now fats. Fats are over double the calories of protein and carbs at 9 calories per gram. They're not just in deep fried foods, chocolates, cakes. Think salad dressing, mayo, olive oil, butter. They are all loaded with calories from fat. And don't get me started on peanut butter. A tablespoon or 2 when you're feeling like a snack, and you've obliterated your calorie deficit for the day. But just like with carbs, don't go nuking fats from your diet completely. You still need some fats for adequate hormone production and also vitamin absorption. Just make smart swaps like going for low-fat dairy instead of full fat, measuring out the oil you use, and using leaner cuts of meat. Now you might be thinking, great, I know what to eat, but how do I make this work for me? Let's start with what I don't recommend, and that's rigid meal plan. I'm a fan of recreating the athlete's plate, the weight loss version. Instead of obsessing over a meal plan, just make sure most of your meals look like this one. 1/4 of your plate is a lean protein source. Around half is either veggies or fruit or a combination. And the last quarter is carbs with a small space for fats. It's simple, flexible, and it works. Here's what I had for breakfast because I worked out this morning: a bowl of overnight protein oats. For lunch, 95% fat-free ground beef, steamed vegetables, and potatoes. The beauty of this concept is it can work anywhere. Even restaurants. You don't have to be the person awkwardly ordering a salad and feeling starving when you leave the restaurant. Just aim to organize your plate in a similar way. As some of you might know, I'm a big fan of flexible dieting. That means 80 to 90% of the time, your meals will look like this, and 10 to 20% of the time, maybe you'll have a burger, a pizza, or some dessert. Now let's talk about supplements, the magic pills and powders that promise to melt away fat from your body. The reality is, most of them are as useful as a wooden frying pan. I've spent hundreds on fat burners, and guess what? Most of them are glorified caffeine pills that increase your heart rate, they'll burn a few more calories, but they won't do anything significant for fat loss. There are some supplements that help fill in the gaps in your diet, stuff like creatine, omega-3s, vitamin D, and zinc. But the first one I actually recommend is protein powder. It's by no means magic, but it will help you increase your protein intake. One study actually showed that adding a 30-gram protein shake to your day can actually help prevent fat regain after a diet. I'm personally a fan of Whey Isolate and I use the one from Legion, but you can use any trusted supplier that you like the taste of. Okay, so now you have a good idea of what to eat. This is where people get confused. Meal frequency. I used to think that skipping meals was a secret to stay in a calorie deficit, less food, fewer calories, but I was wrong. What it did was make me feel more tired and way more likely to binge in the evening. I will say one thing, intermittent fasting is extremely popular. It's basically where you eat within a window, and the most popular window is between 12 and 8 p.m. It works for some people. It did work for me in the past.
Okay, so it's 2:08 in the afternoon. Haven't even eaten breakfast yet. And this is what is on the menu. 1,059 calories for breakfast, and then none all day.
Not because it has any particular magic, but just because it fitted my schedule and helped me stay in a calorie deficit. On the flip side, eating little and often does not speed up your metabolism, and it's not something I actually recommend. I recommend sticking to 3 to 4 meals spread out with no snacks in between. Now let's talk about where you eat. Believe it or not, this can actually have an impact on how much you eat. So one study looked at the food environments of over 8,000 different households and found that eating in front of the TV was one of the strongest predictors of being overweight. Of course, you can eat popcorn while watching a film and you can eat the occasional meal while watching TV. Just try not to make it a habit at every single meal. And other studies have shown that slowing down, chewing your food more can actually reduce hunger and boost fat loss. This will also improve digestion. All the strategies I've shared in this video so far will help you get into a calorie deficit, but we need to set some realistic expectations. Don't try and do a massive overhaul at once. Focus on small things, small changes. Maybe you're eating more vegetables, maybe one of your meals looks like the athlete's plate for now, then you work on the other 2 over time. Because small wins will add up, you don't want to overwhelm yourself and then have to quit because you're doing too much. Now you may be wondering, how many calories should you eat? I've dropped some very simple to use calculators below that you can use to work that out. But you need to realize one thing from the get-go. Use this as guidance. Don't expect to be perfect all the time. Accept that you will slip up and maybe you'll binge on some ice cream, maybe you'll overeat, or maybe that will turn into a cheat meal, a cheat day, and that's completely fine. It's just all about being able to get straight back to it, and that will happen over time. The last thing I wanted to cover is, if you find yourself cheating, constantly cheating on a diet, that's a sign that it's probably too restrictive and you need to make it more enjoyable. For example, if you can't stand a certain food, like cottage cheese, a lot of people don't like it. Even though it's high in protein, it's a great low calorie option. Don't just force yourself to eat it. By not eating it, your results will not be affected in the slightest. I always do my best to give my clients flexibility, so I suggest you finding recipes you enjoy making, experiment, and create a diet that feels a lot more like a lifestyle, which is going to be sustainable in the long run. So that's all I wanted to cover. I really appreciate you getting this far. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up. If you've got any questions at all, feel free to comment below or send me a message on Instagram @AdamScottFit. Have the best day ever, and we'll talk soon.